Whether it's bad planning, bad luck, bad timing, or bad inventions, well-intentioned bad decisions have plagued history for thousands of years. Welcome to Historic Hindsight. Hello and welcome to another episode of Historic Hindsight. I'm John, that's Tom, and today we're going to talk to you about Mormons.
That's right, Johnny. Mormons. Well,
why?
Well, because they got into some shenanigans. So I'm going to preface this. So first off, again, I like to reiterate things because Johnny tends to forget and goes off on his own spree from time to time. Historic Hindsight as an entity is apolitical.
Yeah, me too. I don't have any political leanings.
We don't have any religious leanings, and we do our best to present evidence and facts as they were without skewing them, although of course we do skew them a little bit because we're trying to be sort of entertaining.
I'm both apolitical and a-religious.
Yes, and amoral. This particular topic that we're going to be talking about today could be a little touchy because it is about a sect of a religion, Mormons.
Okay.
But we
So you're saying it's something that a religion did bad and it wasn't the Christians?
Well, I think the Mormons would argue that they are Christians, but yes.
Well,
yes.
But you know what like the Christian church,
or
the Catholic Church, or the big crusade.
This is something that the Mormons did wrong, bad on their end. Sort of. We'll decide. So what we're specifically talking about today, and again, we're not making fun of Mormons here. Intentionally, at least.
Any more than we do anybody else.
But what we're specifically talking about is the Utah expedition, a.k.a. the Utah War, a.k.a. the Mormon War, a.k.a. the Third Mormon War, because there was actually two before this one, a.k.a. President Buchanan's blunder, or also what I like to call pre-Civil War, which is why I'm wearing my Civil War stuff, because this is actually a pre-Civil War kickoff here.
I was wondering, I was a little bit worried that I may have misdressed and not worn the right outfit. But so is this basically the Mormons' campaign to take over Utah and make everybody who lives there Mormon?
Well, yes, kind of, yes. So
successful then.
Yes. Yeah. Well, hey, mission accomplished. Fly that banner. So what it actually is, it's a conflict between the federal government and the territory of Utah, specifically the provisional governor Brigham Young, who was the head of the Mormon Church at this time, or at least in that area, from May 1857 to July 1858. So not a very long expedition, or not a very long war. It's a little over a year, but here we are. So to give some background information is how does the federal government get involved with war with a religious church? Considering separation between church and state, we should leave them alone, right?
Well, but I mean, I imagine this was more about the land, right? Or was this not a land dispute?
This actually was not a land dispute for a change, Johnny. Not a land dispute. So
I thought that was the only thing that
we go to war for.
The early United States did in the out west was land disputes.
We do get a little bit in arms about what we consider moral and what is amoral and what we don't like. We go after, and that's kind of what happens here.
Okay.
So bear with me. I'm gonna paint a picture of to where we get, and then we'll talk about the war itself. So we got to go all the way back to 1848 at the end of the Mexican-American War, when a huge chunk of land is given to us from Mexico because, well, we earned it.
Yeah, and I assume that's what is now Texas, and then New Mexico. And
actually, Texas is already broken off. We'd already gotten Texas.
We had already had Texas. By this
time? They already had their own little independent war and all that.
So what land did we get from Mexico here? Then?
We got huge swaths of Nevada, Utah, Arizona, North Dakota, South Dakota, New Mexico, and parts of California in this.
Okay. So the Southwest, basically.
Basically the entire Southwest, yes.
When you say, anywhere you say, I want a vacation to the Southwest, this is what we got then.
Yes, and the Mormons, specifically Brigham Young, wanted to make this huge swath of land its own state called Deseret. The Mormons would first immigrate. Yeah, it's a dumb name. Well,
it's a real dumb name.
The Mormons would immigrate to the region after the first Mormon War. They were in Missouri. They get kicked out of Missouri. They go to Illinois. They get kicked out of Illinois, and so then they fled to this new land. And it's
what's making us breeze over the first two Mormon wars? What were those about?
Well,
why are the Mormons having so many wars? They're a young religion, right?
This is brand new. Like this
1800s created religion, right? So this was in its
infancy. We're in infancy. Yeah.
They already have 3 wars.
Well, it's all
that's a bad start, I think.
It's all essentially about the same thing. So bear with me.
Okay.
So they get kicked out of Illinois. Once they're kicked out of Illinois, right about the time that Joseph Smith dies, who's the founder of the religion.
Thank God his name wasn't John Smith. It
John
was so
Smith, yeah.
close.
It was so close, yeah. So once Joseph Smith dies, there's some infighting between a lot of the church elders as to who should
The
be
cult leader, the church leaders.
Damn it, Johnny!
Did I do the thing?
You did the
I
thing
did the
already.
thing.
Come on.
Ah, that was early. I'm sorry.
That
guys. I
was
didn't
so
mean it.
early.
I didn't mean it.
We're not going to be popular in Utah on this one, I don't think.
Sorry, Utah.
In any case, there's some infighting going on. There's some basically two sects form, and we'll get there in a second. But the major sect underneath Brigham Young goes out west to settle in this new territory that we got from the Mexican-American War. The U.S. government looks at this new territory and says, yeah, we're not going to make a state called Deseret because first, horrible name.
Dumb
and
name.
second, that state is like half the size of our country. Like, no, we're not going to give you half the country as its own state. But
and then how many years later? Then we're like, oh, Alaska. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, we forget. Everybody thinks Alaska is just this little, like, they think it's the size of Ohio because on the map, it looks like the size of Ohio. But
it's most of the continental United States.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like 80% of it.
And like
it's crazy.
6 dudes, a mule, and their sister Clara lives up there, and that's about it.
Well, but it's not even our least populated state, I guess due to size. I'm guessing by like land area.
You just mean like total population. Yeah,
total population.
That's Wyoming, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
We're getting sidetracked. Sorry. Anyways,
Maybe
so
North Dakota.
In the 1850 Compromise, which you should recognize that a little bit because we talked about it a couple weeks ago in This Week in History with Bleeding Kansas.
Oh, I thought I was remembering it from like chapter 4.3 in my social studies book from high school, but maybe that's what I'm remembering it from.
Yeah, I doubt you're. Anyways, so the 1850 Compromise kind of sets up a new territory called Utah, which is actually basically most of Nevada, Utah, parts of South Dakota, and a little bit of Nevada. New Mexico, I think. But anyways, he basically gives them the north central part of that big new landmass that we got.
Right, okay.
And they give Brigham Young, they say, you are now going to be the provisional governor. Have at it.
Great.
Yep, and that was all done underneath President Millard Fillmore. And it was kind of the start of the church.
Just the best
President
name.
Millard Fillmore. Yeah, we should probably do an episode on him just because of his name.
We should. I want to learn more about him.
And there was like... The U.S. government obviously recognized that there was some ill-found hostilities between the government and Mormons, or at least people in the United States and Mormons, and that's
right.
Still
They've been kicked out of 2 states before this,
and still to this
right?
day, that's still kind of. There's a reason why most Mormons are only in Utah, for whatever reason, there's hostility there. Now, so it was kind of an olive branch to try to let them. All right, you can have your little state. You can kind of set your religion up in that state. You can even be in control of most of the territory if you want. But what we have to keep in mind through this whole episode is that when a state is a territory, before it becomes a state, the federal government has all control over that. So you're not voting.
As a territory?
Yeah, as a territory, the federal government has control over it. So they can't control who. Yeah, they can't control. They're not voting for who their political officers are.
Right, because it's a federal territory.
It's a federal territory, yeah.
It's like it's occupied by like Great Britain when they came in, and they're like, this is the Aleutian Islands or Falkland Islands, whatever, where they got the sheep. This is ours now.
Yep.
Okay, so it's all just it's a dictatorship basically, as far as the people there is concerned.
Sort of, except like it's the dictatorship of whoever it's whoever is appointed there has all the say. So provisional governor Brigham Young has all the say essentially until the federal government says we don't like what you're doing and then changes it.
Sounds like a middle management dictator to me.
That's what we have. We have a middle management dictator, and everything would have probably been okay and hunky dory, except there was gold that was discovered in them hills.
Oh man, gold!
You have the California gold rush. So now you have a bunch of people flooding through the Utah territory to get to California, and
this poor governor is sitting there with like 130 people to govern over. He's like, hey guys, can we just all like be cool? And all right, yeah, that's great, good, and we won't really do anything. Nobody will mess with anybody. And then all of a sudden, hundreds and hundreds or thousands and thousands of people are rushing through their state to get to the gold mines.
To
That's what's going
California.
on?
Yeah, they're not even staying in Utah. That's the important part.
No,
They're just going through.
yeah,
We're cutting right through. And
it was like the country's first flyover state.
yeah, and as they're in their wagons and they're going along in their wagons and they're bouncing around and they're looking out and they're going, why does that guy have 5 wives? I don't like that.
Wait a minute. I'm not allowed to have 5 wives according to my religion.
So you shouldn't have 5 wives. And there's the
rub, huh?
There's the rub. There's the rub.
So all of the so basically, if we're going to do like a clickbait headline, this is really a matter of man gets jealous of Mormons' multiple wives.
Yes, man gets jealous of Mormons' multiple wives. So by the mid-1850s, it's become clear that the Mormons has essentially set Utah up as a theodemocracy. So it is
Yeah,
a theocracy.
which is kind of what they told him that was okay to do, right?
Which is pretty much kind of what the government...
They're like, yeah, go do what you want. I don't care, whatever. It's your territory. And they're like, okay, cool. We're going to have multiple wives and live kind of commune style.
Yep. Most of the public and federal positions were held by people, members of the Mormon Church. And the Mormon Church was kind of doing their own things. For instance, I can't stress this enough, like land disputes. If there's a land dispute, they're not like writing down deeds and that kind of stuff. Instead, what they do is they send it to their I'm going to mess this word up. The church court. Ecclesiastical. That's it. Ecclesiastical arbitration, and they would set it up to the church to decide, as opposed to the courts. And the few federal judges that were appointed that weren't Mormon were like, you can't. No, the United States Congress, the Supreme Court, the executive, we control this. You can't go off on your own and create your own laws and ignore our courts. So,
right, but they're like, well, no, but I like this guy better, so if there's a land dispute, I'm going to give it to him because, I don't know, he shared his wife with me or whatever. I don't know if there was wife sharing going on, maybe.
I don't think, no, it was just,
probably
no, they're not wife sharing, just have a lot
you
of
get
wives,
your wives, and that's it. Your multiple wives.
Yeah, you're not sharing them, no.
Okay.
I think they would be very against that. But, so instead of the U.S. rule of
Naturally.
law, they start favoring Zion's rule of law. Zion is their, God's kingdom, heaven rule.
So this is Scientology, part 1.
The image, I mean, maybe.
I'm sorry, this is my first. I don't know much about the Mormon church.
So I could go into the Mormon church with.
Maybe let's not get into. We don't need to get into.
But we don't. I'm gonna get.
We'll talk off pod.
In a candy cane world, basically Zion is the kingdom of heaven. It's their rule of law.
It's a location.
Yeah, but it's like
it's not an alien that comes down.
No.
Okay,
it's like
okay. So I take my statement back. It's not Scientology.
Yeah, it's their kingdom of heaven. It's God's
Eden.
law. Yeah, it's Eden. It's like if
deal.
Eden had a law, that's
Sure. Okay. All right.
Which
I'm
it does.
It's
the 10 Commandments. Eden's law is
right.
the 10 Commandments kind of thing.
Well, sort of. I mean,
I know
they came later, but
I'm trying to help.
Circle.
I'm trying to help.
Yeah, time's a flat circle. Who cares?
So that kind of makes a lot of the federal appointed positions that police officers. There currently in my town there is a standoff between the U.S. Marshals and somebody that was being served a warrant. So the town's kind of hit an uproar right now.
A buzz.
It's a buzz. It's been going on since like 10 o'clock this morning too, and they're still not done. Hey, the hostages.
Are the other 62 members of your town gathered at the person's house
hotel,
watching?
Yeah. It's a hotel. Yeah, it's the best
hotel.
Plug for the best Western in Brazil. You have a current federal standoff going on right now. The hostages have been released though, and the hotel's been evacuated. So I'm really not sure what the dealio is. But
the people that they went to arrest got released?
No. He had a hostage.
Oh, hostages. I forgot what a hostage was for a second. That's my bad.
They've been released. So that's what the police went. Anyways, the federal judges, they're not too happy with the Mormon Church in that regard about like ignoring the rule of law and putting in their own rule of law. Pair this up with fear-mongering that was going on in the newspapers that said the Mormon Church was trying to set up the Zion Kingdom, which they were.
So this is a Sharia law type
kind of thing. Yeah,
fear
yeah.
mongering type. Like they're gonna take over and they're gonna make
yeah.
everybody, instead of them just doing their thing, they're gonna make everybody do it.
Yep.
You'll have to have 5 wives.
These rumors aren't helped when one of those groups of Mormons that I talked about that broke off was after Joseph Smith's death. They went up to Beaver Island in Lake Michigan, where their leader, James Strange, pronounced himself king. So not helping anything in
Okay,
that
and
regard.
so this is the only reason why I mentioned it as kind of a Scientology cult type thing, is I think with a new religion, which it was a new religion,
New
right?
religion,
Like
yes.
yeah, religion. And so you're going to have the people who are like, okay, this is our religion and we're serious about it, and that's what it is. And there are going to be other people who are like, I'm going to take power.
Yeah.
And so like that sect that broke off, and this dude is like, no, I'm king. He was trying to be a cult leader.
Yes.
He wasn't trying to be a religious leader for the Mormon religion.
No, that was definitely more cultish.
And so that's why I mentioned that similarity.
Yes.
It's not the modern day Mormon church. It's the beginnings of it, where people are trying to grab at whatever power they can get, however they can get it, and if they can use, it's the televangelist type thing, preying on other people's, anyway,
goodwill, I guess, or easy-mindedness,
beliefs and fears and hopes and dreams and all that.
Yeah, however you want to swing it. If you further this up with the fact that Brigham Young has his own paramilitary organization called the Danites, who are rumored to be forcing control on the Mormons, and basically the rumor here is that they are forcing people to stay a Mormon. Like if they want to leave, they're not being let to leave. Brigham Young's defense to this is, well, listen, Utah's pretty big. I can't force everybody to stay here, so that's just absurd to think that these Danites can keep everybody here. Although if you look at the numbers, there's a hell of a lot more people trickling in than coming out. So do with that information as you will.
No, I mean, it comes down to, again, the people who are doing this for the wrong reasons. It's brainwashing. Mm-hmm. That's how you get people to stay.
And then
it's a formulaic system. Like, and I'm sure they had it figured out.
They had it figured out. And finally, the big kicker here, again, we stressed it earlier, but polygamy, it's a hot button item. It's such a hot button item that the newly formed Republican Party was running in the first election in 1854 that, our two stances are that we're going to get rid of the barbaric systems that are in place in the United States government, that being slavery and polygamy. So the whole Republican Party was founded.
Now, of course, this was before we put in place that whole separation of church and state bit into the what was the
Constitution?
The Constitution thing.
Yeah, the First Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, so this was before that.
No, this is much after that, Johnny.
But this is
right, separation between church and state. Yeah, well.
That.
In any case, the Republicans
the wrong thing.
Yeah, the Republicans are very much against slavery. They're also very much against polygamy. So I misspoke. The 1856 election, when it's coming up, when they're running, that's what their campaign is running on. Now, the Democrats not wanting to sound like they supported polygamy because, Jesus condemns it, they also kind of come out and say, well, we don't really like it, but here's the truth. With that 1850 compromise, we kind of have to sort of be okay with it because, listen, when we said that the state should dictate, or the territory should dictate whether they can or can't have slaves, we kind of have to let them dictate whether they can or cannot have 50 wives.
So basically they were on board because they're like, oh, whoa, hold on. If we tell them that they can't do that, that means you can tell us
that we can't do this.
That we can't do that.
Yeah.
And then we don't want that. So, I mean, yeah, ew, gross, sinful, whatever they were mad about. I don't know, but you can't tell them to not do it.
I found
they had the right idea.
Yeah,
it's the don't mess with it. Like, don't. We're not going to tell other people what to do. They're just going to live their lives, and it's fine.
But I ran some numbers, so to give you an idea of like how in-depth polygamy was in the church at this time. the numbers aren't small, but they're not like massive either. So 25% of the Mormon households in Utah were a part of plural marriages, so multiple wives, and over a third of the women being engaged in it happened when they got marital age. So like a third of the women in Utah were a part of plural marriages, and then
Okay.
25% of the households, so a quarter, were a part of multi-wife
Multiple.
marriages.
It was
And
always multiple wives. Is that correct?
yes, always multiple wives, not multiple husbands, multiple wives, and the marriage age was 12. So different times. Brigham Young himself had 55 wives.
No, not
So,
different times. Pedophilia,
yeah.
brainwashing,
Well-
grooming,
Well,
horrific.
like I said, Brigham Young.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, Brigham Young, the leader
Just
of
start
the church.
Googling those. All
Yeah.
of this applies to that. That's
Yes, it does.
awful.
It does. Brigham Young had 55
F your
wives.
F your different
John,
times
you're not
thing.
getting that part. 55 wives Brigham Young had. So your whole point of the leader doing what he wants so he can get it,
Yeah, that's what he
the
did.
guy had 55 wives. Now, the reason
Yes.
why polygamy started to exist in the church is on their hike out west, a lot of people died. And by people, I mean men. And then they were leaving the women husbandless.
Sure, bunch of widows.
And so the idea was, it started out as kind of a survival thing. Well, we'll take this extra woman into the fold so that way she doesn't starve. And I'm not going to just have her live in my house without, being able to have a poke and a tickle. So,
well, also,
and you can't have a
children.
poke and a tickle without
also
getting
just
married.
The
Well,
whole
breed-
kids,
yeah, well, breeding-
the whole
yeah.
kid stuff and needing work and
Yep.
getting the name going and providing 12-year-old girls for other men to marry, rape, and indoctrinate.
All that fun
into
stuff.
their-
So,
you know.
1856 election rolls around. Buchanan is elected the president. We should all recognize that name from our Civil War and Hindsight episodes.
Yeah, because everybody's listening to everything we do, I assume.
Yep. All 5 listeners.
Hey, speaking of, if you've made it this far, go ahead and subscribe. It'd be
Right,
great.
right.
Help us out
It
a
would
lot.
be great.
Would love it.
So President
Thank you.
Buchanan's first goal is he starts putting in some new federal appointed positions into Utah to kind of curb some of these rumors he's hearing.
No, so new, like he's creating new positions.
No, he's just
for it?
appointing
new
he's appointing new people
to do it.
to
Okay.
do that are non-Mormon, which I'm sure really sat well with the Mormon Church. It didn't.
Yeah.
And
So
then,
basically,
of course,
he
if you're a
took this-
non-Mormon looking
yeah.
into the Mormon world, it's very different. It's hard to understand. So, of course, you're going to see something like plural marriage and go, they're raping kids, which, I mean,
Plural marriage, I have no problem with. Let's go ahead and set that
the
age
12-year-old
at 18.
yeah.
Or if you want to play the of the time thing, 16.
Yeah.
I'll lean to that with you. Fine. 12, you can F off with that.
A lot of these, so this led very quickly to a lot of these non-Mormon political positions to be run out of town, so to speak, and I mean literally run out of town.
Yeah.
One of them being W. Drummond, who was an associate judge in Utah Territory of the Supreme Court, so an associate justice of the Supreme Court. He resigns. In his resignation letter on March 30th, 1857, he charged that Brigham Young's powers set aside the rule of law in the territory, that the Mormons had ignored the laws of Congress and the Constitution, and that male Mormons acknowledged no law but the priesthood. All of those things are pretty much true.
Right.
Like, he's
But
not really
again,
speculating anything.
Again, that's what they told them to do.
Kind of, yes. He further
They said you could
charges-
do that, and then
Yeah.
they're like, not like that though.
Yeah, just
Do
not
what you
like that.
want, but
Yeah.
not that.
Not that,
I thought
yeah.
you would want what I wanted, but you don't.
He further charged that Brigham Young was responsible and the church was responsible for murder, destruction of federal court records, harassment of federal officers, and slandering the federal government. He concluded by urging the president to put a governor who was not a member of the church and to send him with enough military aid to enforce his rules. So basically, his suggestion is replace the governor, bring the military in to ensure that the new governor sits.
Who got murdered?
So we don't know. And I will be fully abreast to say there's a lot of speculation at this time.
Okay, I was afraid I missed like a big thing that you said earlier.
No,
Okay.
no. Congress did recommend that they send a commission, a bipartisan commission down to Utah to investigate the claims of the judge. And Buchanan went the opposite way and appointed a new governor and sent the military. And by appointing a new governor, he actually went around to a few people and was like, hey, do you want to be the governor of Utah? And they're like, ooh, no, I don't really like what's going
heard
on
rumors.
down there. I'm okay with not doing that. He finally finds a guy who's willing by the name of Alfred Cumming, and so he's like, "All right, you're going to go down there. We're going to send the military with you."
He's like,
But
"Sir Cumming, you're going."
he doesn't actually let Brigham Young know he's being replaced. Brigham Young is reading the local newspaper and said, "Alfred Cumming is the new appointed governor of Utah." What? When did this happen?
That stuff's still happening.
And they're sending the military. So in the Mormons' defense, you hear, if you're like, all of a sudden the federal government is stepping in and relieving your governor without telling him and sending the military. You've already fought you've been kicked out of 2 other states by force. I totally understand why Brigham Young went, "Circle the Reagans, bitches. We're going to arm up and defend ourselves." I get it. I totally get it.
Well, no kidding, because they were literally okay. Regardless of how awful the things that they were doing, and not all of them, but the whole 12-year-old thing. In any case, they were told, "This is your space. Do your thing." And like, all right, we're doing our thing, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, that guy that like was leader of that? No, we're getting rid of him. Gonna bring somebody else in, outside hire. No idea what you guys are doing. Doesn't care, but he's gonna make it right." And then we're also going to have some military people coming in. Like, yeah, no kidding that they're
a little up in arms here.
A little on edge, perhaps.
Around 2,500 soldiers will be detached from the 5th Infantry Division, the 10th Infantry, Regiment, 5th Infantry Regiment, 10th Infantry Regiment, B Battery of the 4th Artillery, and the 2nd Dragoons, like I said, totaling around 2,500 men.
The 2nd what?
Dragoons. It was a type of heavy cavalry. Guys on horses. Yes.
Okay.
Guys on horses with lots of equipment.
Yeah, clip claps.
Clippity clops going down in the ponies. As I said, Brigham Young's response was to circle the wagon, so to speak. He calls all the missionaries back into Utah, basically fortifies most of the church within several areas of Utah.
So this is one main church that the Mormons have.
Yeah, and starts arming everybody up. And ramps, like they start making guns. They have gun manufacturers that start making guns. One of those gun manufacturers is actually Jonathan Browning, John Moses Browning's father. And if you're a gun person at home, you know who John Moses Browning is. Well,
have you told me about? Is this
Browning has invented everything.
Shh. There's is there a Browning revolver?
Yes, but that's not. You're thinking of the Browning automatic rifle that I just sent you a picture of the other day. Yes, his son would invent that.
I recognized it.
Now, Jonathan Browning would invent what's called a harmonica rifle, which is a early repeating rifle. It has a steel block that has 5 chambers in it, and it goes in the rifle, and you bang, and you move the chamber over and bang. You move the chamber over and bang.
So the actual cartridge or magazine
is just a steel block.
It looks like a
harmonica. It looks like a harmonica. Yep. He invents that, right. And they're going to be using some of this said equipment potentially against
they turned their church.
Military.
They fortified it into a castle. It's a castle.
It's a castle. Yeah, they've turned Utah into a castle, so to speak. Well, at least certain areas of Utah.
Yeah.
And they even take like scythes, the old-fashioned scythes to cut grass with. Yeah, they're turning those into knives. They're sharpening sabers. They're doing all the stuff. The Utah militia,
Japanese peasant style, back when they had an uprising against the military with their little secret kata and everything.
And he calls up the militia. Now, he does declare martial law as well, and that's the important part. He declares martial law, but he doesn't really explain.
Wait. So the governor.
Brigham Young, head of the church, and but he doesn't really explain to the people what he wants that to mean. Yeah,
what does that mean as far from a governor's aspect? Because I thought that was and I'm obviously mistaken, but I thought that was a federal government thing.
Well, you can do it as state government can declare martial law.
I did not know that. Okay.
But essentially what it basically means is the military is now in charge of the police for the city or the state, wherever it's just declared.
How much of a police force was there?
Not much. That's why the military came in.
We just need somebody to.
So, but John Moses Browning and Buchanan, to both their credits, they tell their men each so Brigham Young tells all of his militia, do not engage directly with the military. What you're supposed to do is slow their advance and make it so that they don't want to stay. So cut down trees to block roads, blow up bridges, burn crops, kill cattle, like make it so that they can't survive.
Guerrilla warfare,
It's
like
total war,
type stuff. Like, yeah, obviously we're overpowered, overmatched. We don't want to have a direct head-to-head combat.
Yeah,
but nobody says we can't block roads and stuff like that. So that's what they're doing. They're trying to be a thorn in the heel.
Yeah, Buchanan tells his military, you are not to go on any offensive campaigns. Your only job is to ensure that Alfred Cummins sits as a governor and you enforce his rule of law, and you can defend yourselves if attacked, but you cannot go on an offensive. So both sides have basically said...
This is two barking dogs on the side of, like, a fence, but... that fence, like, doesn't actually exist. Like, they could go around it, but they're just sitting at the fence because nobody told them they're allowed to go around it.
Yep.
That's what we're looking at.
The war officially begins when the military moves out on July 18th, 1857, eventually under the leadership of Albert Johnson, who will become a famous Confederate general in a few years when the bigger war kicks off.
Wait, the what?
Yeah, right? Not to burst any bubbles here already, but there weren't any major battles in this war, so I'm not going to talk. Like, what you have to understand is the military came in, they were horribly unprepared, they left towards the end of the summer, so, like, they're leaving in July. There's going to be a winter campaign very quick. They didn't prepare for that. The Mormons do a great job of just destroying everything and slowing their advance. The fort that they were supposed to set up winter camp in got burned down, so when they arrived at the camp, they're like, yay! No shelter.
So this is Home Alone.
This is Home Alone. They have to bivouac in tents, and like their cattle that they have with them for food gets killed. All the cattle that's around that they could steal, they've been killed. All the crops have been burned. So you can imagine that the civilian population in Utah that isn't Mormon or is Mormon but doesn't want to be a part of the whole militia is like, what the hell?
Like, guys, what? I've been living over here forever, just chilling in my cabin in the mountains in the woods, and all of a sudden I got people coming all over my road. I don't know what's going on. Somebody put a tree down over there. What are you guys doing? This is insane.
And speaking of those innocent lives, on September 7th through the 11th at Mountain Meadows, a group of Arkansas... Never forget. This is the true 9/11 that you should actually, honestly, never forget, because this is atrocious.
No.
A group of Arkansas settlers that were passing through Utah on their way to California. They're just trying to have a better life. There's gold on them dar hills. They want to go and get there. They're just passing through.
Yeah.
But this is right when the whole martial law is declared.
How many people?
Clarification. Between 120 and 150 reports kind of vary.
Okay, so a pretty big group,
a good size
wagon train type
wagon
whatever.
Train.
Yeah.
There is a Mormon militia commander in this region named William H. Dame who decides that he wants to track said wagon train.
Why?
We don't know. The speculation
is it just like paranoid and suspicious, or?
Well, so what's also going on in the Mormon Church right now is a massive reformation. So they're very fearful of the outside world, which rightfully so. I mean, they did get kicked out of
the outside world is literally attacking them.
They're literally attacking them
with the military of the United States.
Any new people coming through, they're skeptical of this whole confusion over the martial law. Like, should we let these people pass? Should we not let them people pass? They have a wagon train full of glorious equipment that,
that might be the big
maybe we want it.
Yeah.
And they try to convince, they're also trying to convince, like, the outside world that Utah has an Indian problem, so that, like, maybe people don't go there, so that they can kind of have it for themselves. Again, this
they're trying to say, like, there's savages, like bad savages that are attacking, they'll kill you and attack you. And so he's trying to scare people away with that.
He decides he's going to attack this train. And he dresses himself and his men up in Indian garb. They are also accompanied by a dozen Paiute Indians who are like, we'll go on.
How much are you going to pay us?
Yeah.
We'll get a cut?
Yeah,
why not?
And so they attack.
And you won't kill us in the process? That's so new. Thank you.
And they attack the wagon train on September 7th. But these Arkansas guys, they know how to fight. So they circle them wagons. They literally dig trenches and get engaged in a 5-day siege with the Mormon militia.
So, like this, I mean, of course they know how to. This is a bunch of dudes and families and whatever going out to find gold.
Yeah, they know how to
Like
fight. They're fine.
they're not going to go out there with like no knowledge of how to protect
In an area that
said
has
gold
like,
if they found it.
at this point, if you're on a wagon train going west, you have people who know how to fight because as much as we joke about it, there actually are legitimately Indians that are, not too happy about how things have gone, and
Absolutely,
so are,
yeah.
scalping.
Yeah, the whole savage thing, it was very much overblown, and it was, they
But it
applied it
didn't-
to everybody, but just like there are savage every other nationality, there were savage Indians that would just go ahead and kill you and
Yep.
take your
Now,
scalp and everything else.
On the 11th, Dame feared that the settlers had kind of figured out that they weren't Indians. It was like, I'm pretty sure they've seen a couple of us white folk, and we can't have them going off and
telling everybody
telling
that
everybody
white folk
that
are dressing up as Indians and killing people.
So what he decides, he tells his men, he goes underneath a white flag, goes up to the settlers underneath a white flag, and says, "Hey, we're Mormon, and we see that you've been attacked by the damn it, what's the tribe?
Oh wait, so he changed
The
outfits.
Paiutes.
He
Yeah,
did
changed outfits.
he did a costume change.
Yeah, he did his costume change.
backstage, and he's like, were those nasty Indians attacking you?
Yep, he does his costume change backstage. He goes up to them and he says, "Listen, I've negotiated with the Indians. They have allowed you to leave as long as you give them all your stuff. So give them all your stuff. They'll allow you to leave. We'll guide you to safety." The man,
This jerk is sitting there, and he's like, "All right, well, I have to get out of this negative situation." And instead of just being like, "Hey, I talked to him, and it's cool, and I solved it for you, maybe a reward," which would have been kind of sleazy. He went full sleaze and just like, "Oh yeah, then you're gonna have to leave all your stuff because I still want to rob you."
buckle up, Johnny. It's gonna get way worse.
I thought we were at the end of this. What? Good God! All right.
So the men in the Arkansas, settler group say, "Well, okay, great. We're actually kind of almost out of ammunition, anyways. It's been a 5-day siege. We've got women and children. Sure, have all of our shit. Great." So
Whatever.
the
Yeah,
Mormons,
we're about to go find a bunch of gold anyway.
the Mormons leave them out in two groups. They separate the men from the women and children, and they go in two different directions. Several miles away from the wagon train, they turn on them and kill every one of them.
You know who else separated the men from the women and children?
Hitler did. There's our Hitler plug for the week.
Had to get it in.
Yeah, so
he.
they
I'm
turn
sorry.
on them and
Rewind.
Kill,
Rewind, because all I was doing was running that Hitler
Hitler
joke
plug,
through my
okay.
head, and I
So
missed what you actually said. And it sounds
them,
horrific.
They separate the men and walk them in one direction. They separate the women and children and walk them in a different direction. About 2 miles or several miles away from the wagons, they turn on them and gun them all down. Only 17 children are left alive, and they're left alive because they were deemed to be too young to remember the incident. And in a complete sleazeball move,
Bet they weren't.
they were farmed out to a whole bunch of Mormon families, like as adopted children. So now imagine if you're like up to 7 was alive. So imagine you're a little 7-year-old kid who just saw your entire family friggin' massacred by these people. Now they've adopted you and you're supposed to be their kid. And let me tell you, the Mormon church now is a lot different than what it was then in types of fanaticism. But back then, like, you are in a different world. You might as well have been abducted by the Indians at this point because it is that much of a different world.
The cultural differences between them and everybody else living in the United States at the time.
Now, Brigham Young would write a letter that was dated September 8th to Dame that said, "In regard to immigration trains passing through our settlements, we must not interfere with them until they are first notified to keep away. You must not meddle with them. The Indians, we expect, will do as they please, but you should try to preserve the good feelings with them. There are no trains going south that I know of. If those who are there will leave, let them go in peace." So he writes a letter.
Guys, I totally didn't just do this thing that
After, and so there is a lot of speculation.
Find out about.
There's a lot of speculation that did this order to attack this train come from higher ups, and this letter, while should alleviate Brigham Young of any wrongdoing, I'm highly suspicious because that line, "the Indians will do as they please," kind of to me tells me that he was telling them, just pretend to be Indian.
And well, not that I know of any that are coming through in the next couple of days that might have been brutally massacred. But the Indians are going to do what they're going to do, and I can't help that.
Yeah, and this
also, this is 5 days ago, by the way.
Yeah, this letter reached Dame like 3 days after the massacre, so good on you, Brigham Young. Which, by the way, I'm not going to... Look, I'm sorry. Brigham Young, if you're a Mormon, was an awful, awful human being, and I will do an episode on him. He was awful. He was nothing more than a fanatic cult leader who was trying to take power, period. The dude had 55 wives. Awful human being. Anyways.
Yeah, like even if you're all on board with the polygamy thing, which fine, I don't give a shit what you do.
Yeah, do
55, 55. Come on, 3, 4 tops.
So
either way, 3.
Now,
like, I don't know 55 people.
The Mormon Church today does recognize that this is an incident that happened, and they chalk it up to fear, which is partly true.
That's fair.
But
bit.
the problem is there was also another massacre besides the Meadows massacre, which occurred later. Because in October 1857...
This is after the war, right?
No, this is still in the war.
This is still during it.
There's the Aikens massacre, which was 6 Californians who were arrested by the Mormon militia and charged with being spies.
Yeah.
They were later released and said, all right, you guys aren't spies, but were then, after being released, like, go on your own, guys, you're good to go, were murdered, shot in the back, and robbed of their stock and $25,000. So
wait, I'm sorry, that's not equivalent.
No, that's what
money.
that was $25,000 in today's time.
Oh,
no, not today's time. In their time.
Their time. Okay.
Yes. Today's equivalent would be like $1 million. Yeah, like.
There's a bunch of thieves. They're pirates. They're bandits.
Now, in the Meadows massacre, only one would actually wind up getting charged and convicted and tried. That would be Dame himself. He would be tried and found guilty. He claimed the entire time that it was nothing more than he was the scapegoat for the Mormon Church, which he was. But he would be tried, sentenced to death. He would actually be put to death by firing squad, his choice, at the site of the massacre.
I mean, what were the other options? Do we know?
No, it was
hanging?
Whatever his... Yeah, probably hanging. It was his choice. And it was at the site of the massacre on March 23rd, 1877. So a little bit delayed justice, but at least to a degree, hey... And at least, like, you got...
Yeah, it was 20 years.
We're going to put you to death the way that you were put to death, or you put them to death, on the spot that you put them to death at. So
I would have started at his feet.
Yeah, just shot at his feet and worked your way up. Yeah,
you're going to bleed out before I start shooting you in the midsection.
So that pretty much wraps up the majority. There wasn't a lot that happened, but it is a fun note. There were the 2 massacres. It is a fun note to kind of talk about how, like, the U.S. government was set against a religious group, although that happens multiple times in our history. Oops. So much for separation of church and state. But the war kind of winds down when in April 1858, Buchanan sends an additional 3,000 men to Utah. It's like, this is going to end. Like, we're done.
Yeah.
This
is the Hail Mary. You send everybody, send everything, and see what happens.
This opens up peace negotiations. They are lengthy, mainly due to Brigham Young's fear that the government's gonna retaliate against the Mormons, which, I mean, kind of history says that they would, so I understand his fears. But Buchanan will eventually agree to issue full pardons to all the Mormon, anybody living in Utah that may or may not have participated in this rebellion. Full pardons were given.
Just a big old Mormon pardon for everybody.
Yeah,
everybody gets it.
Yeah, everybody gets
a pardon. And
you get a pardon.
You get a pardon. Everybody.
That's handed down on April 6th, 1858. Cummins is installed on April 12th as a new provisional governor, and the military sets up a permanent garrison at Camp Floyd in June of 1858, which is promptly abandoned because the Civil War starts, and oh shit, we need men out east.
Guys, y'all want to come back real quick, please? Also, Mormons, we don't have time for this anymore. It's over. We're done. Whatever. Just keep Utah.
The aftermath is approximately 150 civilians are killed during this whole time that were living or traveling through Utah. Most
slaughtered by the Mormons.
Yes,
is what happened. This isn't a battle. They were slaughtered. No,
these were direct results of Mormon actions. Not the military didn't kill any civilians.
Yeah,
at least not directly. This is actually more civilian deaths in this period than Bleeding Kansas had. So that's we call the whole period of Bleeding Kansas because of how bloody it was. But like more civilians actually died in this Utah expedition than
You
in
want a
Bleeding
Cliff
Kansas.
Notes Bleeding Kansas?
It's basically when the pro-slave and anti-slave flooded into Kansas and fought each other.
Oh, is this for they both flooded there for votes, right?
Yes, yes.
And then they all fought and
started shooting at each
gotcha.
other. Yeah.
I'm guessing there was a lot more blood spilled though, just with like bloody broken noses and stuff there.
Yes, 38 soldiers would die through some small skirmishes that happened, but the vast majority of the deaths were actually due to disease and freezing because, well, we didn't
Cold
send them
in
with the
Utah.
proper. It's cold in Utah, and we didn't send the proper supplies. Whoopsies.
They got mountains and shit.
But the people of Utah are actually the real victims because, well, yup. But hey, one fun thing that came out of this is the Pony Express. It would the Pony Express would be formed out of the Utah War because what happens is during the war, Lot Smith, one of the militia members, would burn down roughly 52 wagons that belonged to outfitters Russell, Majors, and Waddle. The government never reimbursed these outfitters for their losses, and in 1860 they formed the Pony Express to earn a government mail contract to keep them from filing bankruptcy. So, if anything came out of it, Pony Express.
There you go. Now you know.
The more you know. Where did the Pony Express come from?
All right, that's it for this week in Historic Hindsight. If you've made it this far, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and join us next week when we talk about syphilis.